Hello and welcome back to Sunday. I've angled the camera a little bit more towards the window today because it seems to be getting lots of attention for some reason. So anyway, we had bugs out last night. Ooh, it was very exciting. I had both windows open and there was all kinds of excitement going on. So anyway, just so you know, exciting times happen here. All right. Ready for chapter 37, which is Eggy time. I should have brought this up earlier. Okay, so just reading the last little bit of chapter 36 to get us all nice and set. The sun started to set and we all decided to call it a night. Sandy had gone to the grocery and her pantry was partially restocked. She said she wanted to cook for us and we all thought it was a wonderful idea. Sandy's cooking was not to be missed. Bermuda and Mr. Tubbles joined us again, and they had a bit of dirt and a couple leaves on them. I think they'd been up playing by the trees away from the beach. Eggy was still sitting on his mound of sand, enjoying the sun and the view. As soon as I touched him, though, I knew something was up. He had an intensity and an intention about him. "My source," he said gravely, "it is time." Chapter 37, Eggy's time. I looked at the beach, the setting sun, and the beautiful sky. We were all here. Yes, this was the perfect time. I called everyone over and quickly filled them in. Since we are all present and Eggy currently has plenty of magic, he feels this is the right time to transition into a vase, I said. Annabeth's eyes got really big. "Oh, wow," she said. "This is a big moment. I was beginning to wonder if this would ever happen." "Me too," Sandy said, "but I'm glad it's finally happening. Let Eggy know we are here for him and ready to celebrate his transformation." I told him that everyone was excited as I mounded up the sand and made him a little pedestal. We all sat down around him, and even Bermuda and Mr. Tubbles had a spot. Once we were settled, Eggy started talking, and I relayed it out loud so that everyone could follow along. "When my master made me, I was so proud of who I was and the form I had. Together we fought many battles, and I defended him well. I held his magic and channeled his power. Together we slew all of those who would dare attack us. However, we might have done too well together. Other mages thought I would do the same for them, so they killed my master and tried to bend me to their will. I wasn't present when he died, so I don't know how it was done. I only know that I no longer felt my source. As time passed, I realized that in a way, I'd killed my master. A magic sword is a treasure that mages covet, and an awakened magic sword is a treasure so rare it drives some mages to madness. I discovered this as the mage that stole me was himself killed so another could possess me. This happened again and again, and I grew to hate who I was and the form I possessed. I started dreaming that one day I wouldn't be a sword. Instead, I'd be in a form that was the farthest thing from battle lust. I dreamed I'd be a thing of beauty, and I'd sit and be admired by all who saw me. I didn't know what that would be until one day I saw a vase in a window. It was filled with flowers, and all who saw it admired its beauty and the color it held. Nobody wanted to steal the vase, for it wasn't a romanticized object of battle. Instead, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful but common object, and it was allowed to just sit peacefully and enjoy the world. This dream of mine was just a fantasy until I became a part of this family. Now, my new source has fulfilled his promise, and I have the magic I need to change. Penny has provided the final piece and shown me how to transform my shape. Now I ask you all to be with me. Now I ask you to be with me now, to bear witness to my transformation as I leave my battle past behind and embrace a life of beauty and peace ahead. Eggy stopped speaking, and I felt like there was something we should say. I just wasn't sure what it should be. I looked around quickly for help, as I didn't want to stop this special moment, and Sandy spoke up. "I will bear witness," she said solemnly. Oh yeah, that sounded great. I echoed her words, and everyone else followed suit. That must have been the right thing to say, because Eggy transformed before our eyes. He stretched and grew from a solid steel egg to a beautiful ornate vase. He now had a solid base, 2 handles at the top, and a round opening big enough to handle several flowers, but not so big that they would flop around and look droopy. The vase itself was extremely ornate, with leaf shapes, waves of water, scroll work, and lots of fat baby angels. It reminded me of the cathedrals they built back in Michelangelo's time, where everything was decorated and detailed, and there wasn't a plain surface to be seen. Some would have said it was gaudy, but for a magical artifact that had lived for hundreds of years, it was perfect. It looked like a beautifully restored antique, and I could imagine one of those old guys on an antique roadshow musing about what duke or earl this vase had belonged to. I picked Eggy up and gave him a hug. Although he was solid steel, he knew it was the way that fleshy people showed affection, so he got the idea. "Eggy, I'm so proud of you," I exclaimed, hugging him again. "Thank you for allowing me to be your source and becoming part of our family. You can now sit in the window and look as amazing on the outside as I know you are on the inside." Penny buzzed at him in stone speak, and he buzzed back. I don't speak stone, but they both seemed very satisfied. I passed him to Annabeth next, and she gave him a big hug too. "Eggy, you look so elegant," she exclaimed, and then took the time to point out specific parts of the vase that she liked. I could feel Eggy glowing with pride at her praise. "I have a lovely sitting room," she continued, giving me a mischievous look. "So if you ever get tired of Jason and Tyler playing hide the sausage, you are always welcome at my place. We can have a cup of tea and read a nice book together." I had no idea how a vase would have a cup of tea, but Eggy got the idea and appreciated the sentiment. He also really liked the idea of Annabeth reading to him. I wasn't sure if it was because she was a sonic mage, or if he just liked the idea of hearing a story. John was next, and he took a moment to run his fingers over all the decoration. I could see his gray magic dancing along the surface and swirling around inside the vase. Eggy loved the attention, and he practically purred as John caressed him with his earth magic. "You're a pretty thing, aren't you?" he mused aloud. "I don't know that I could do a better job if I'd made you myself. Jason's told me about your master and his forge, so if it's raining and you'd like a break from your window for a while, let me know and we'll get together and make something. I don't have a forge like your master, but I can still transform rocks and metal, so I know we'll make something pretty." I passed Eggy on to Sandy next, who spent a few moments looking over him as well. "Eggy, thank you for taking a chance on Jason and keeping him safe. And thank you for keeping House Louisville safe. Know that you are welcome to sit anywhere in the house, including the front porch and outside in the backyard. It's not big, but there are squirrels, birds, and all kinds of critters that will keep you entertained. I hope you thoroughly enjoy your new form, and I look forward to seeing you around. Even though I can't hear you directly, I'll come over and say hi." She gave Eggy a hug and passed him on to Tyler. I thought Tyler would talk about runes or maybe give a greeting from an incubus perspective. Instead, he spent his time talking about the details on Eggy's vase and how it reminded him of architecture he'd seen. Eggy ate it up. He ate it up with a spoon. He practically glowed as Tyler compared his scroll work to the scroll work he'd seen in Italy, and his cherubs to a fresco he'd seen in a chateau in France. Eggy had obviously given a lot of thought to his exterior, and complimenting his design was complimenting the budding artist he thought he could be. Tyler then held out Eggy for Mr. Tubbles to inspect. He sniffed them for a moment, and I saw a flash of magic pass between them. Then Mr. Tubble sat back looking satisfied, and Tyler presented it to Bermuda next. He tapped Eggy with his paw like he was giving him a high five, and again I saw a little flash of magic. Then Eggy came back to me and our little ceremony was over. Eggy was in his new shape and he was properly celebrated. I'm sure there'd be more to talk about as time passed, but for now, it was good. We all got up, brushed off the sand, and headed into the locker room. Sandy and John were in high spirits from their first day of training, and soon the air was filled with laughter and light teasing. Going from 3 people to 5 made a big difference, and the room seemed to adjust again to give us plenty of space to move around. We showered, changed, and ported back to the house. Before I left, I thanked all the ass blasters and absorbed them back into Penny. I gathered up the rest of my creations and took them back to the house with me. They were all in high spirits, as a day at the beach had been a nice vacation for them. Once we were back, Sandy and John went down to her place to start getting supper ready. Actually, Sandy was going to start cooking and John was going to fetch his famous ale. The rest of us went to my place to put Eggy back on his stand and make sure he was settled in. Eggy had a special stand that looked like a spray of water coming out of the ocean. The base was wide and frothy with sea foam. The column itself was a thick pillar of water ending in a wide splash about waist high. The whole thing looked like it was made out of blown glass, although it flowed and moved over time. It had all the shades of blue in it, almost white blue for bubbles, light blue to show the rush of water, deep blue for the core. Right at the top there was an indent, perfect for the bottom of an egg. Now the rounded dip was gone and it was replaced by a sunken circle. I placed Eggy on the stand and the bottom of his face fit perfectly. I stepped back to admire him as his polished steel reflected all the blues in the stand. It made all his details popped, and he looked even more beautiful, if that was possible. All that detail went well against the simplicity of the window. The house had provided 2 floor-to-ceiling windows that were elegantly framed by white linen curtains tied back with white braided cords. The window and the stand looked lovely together and totally fit the top tropical theme of my bedroom. The whole setting looked like it had been lifted right out of a home in Key West. When the weather was nice, I could open the windows and Eggy and his flowers would be framed nicely. It would be his own slice of heaven. Now, all he needed was his flowers. House, I called. Thank you for the wonderful stand you provided for Eggy. It has been a lovely home for him so far, and the whole window setting is just perfect. Now that he is transformed into a vase, he is ready for his flowers. I'm not sure what type of flowers he wants, or if he will want different ones over time, but please take care of him. Make sure he always looks fresh and beautiful. I paused as I thought about what the others had said on this beach, and decided to add one more thing. Also, if he wants to relocate around the house, or if he wants something other than flowers, please give it to him. Just remember that he helped defend your shield, and don't charge me too many Morphos points if you can help it. Your bargaining skills need a bit of work, Tyler laughed. I think you just wrote Eggy a blank check, and then asked the house not to screw you over too badly. I did, didn't I? I said wryly. I don't want to go all thrifty now, though. This is Eggy's dream, and I want it to continue to come true in the best way possible. We admired Eggy for a few minutes more, and then said our goodbyes and headed down to Sandy's place. To my utter surprise, Eggy beat us down there. We knocked on the door, and John let us in, and Eggy was already sitting on the end table by the sofa. He was filled with strands of white and yellow orchids. It was perfect, as their delicate color accented his metallic sheen perfectly. When did Eggy show up? I asked John. He shrugged. I'm not sure. I looked around and he was already sitting there. I was blown away, but John was clearly not impressed. I guess he was used to things happening on their own. I was completely floored, though. I was used to carrying Eggy around and having him stay on the spot I'd left him. I'd told the house he could move around wherever he wanted. I just hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. We all told Eggy how good he looked with his new flowers, and then John started handing out the ale. It was just as good as I remembered and just as potent. Before I knew it, I finished my first glass and John was pouring me a refill. Annabeth shot me a warning glance, although she'd finished her first glass too. Bermuda showed up with Mr. Tubbles and introduced him to Sandy's two cats, Biscuit and Snowy. There were some looks and attitude thrown around, but nobody got seriously mad or started a fight. They were still focused on Sandy, as they clearly missed her a lot, and as long as Mr. Tubbles didn't get in the way of that, then he was okay. He and Bermuda each picked a spot on the back of the sofa where they had a good view of the room and settled down. Sandy stopped what she was doing to go over and meet Mr. Tubbles. She knelt down on the floor so she was face to face with her one-eyed visitor. "Mr. Tubbles, this is Sandy." Tyler started the introduction. "Sandy, this is Mr. Tubbles. He likes long walks on the beach, listening to your heart's desire, and women that smell like tuna." Sandy gently reached out, let Mr. Tubbles sniff her hand, and then began rubbing behind his ears. "I think your daddy is a silly goose," she told him lightly. Tyler laughed. "He really does prefer treats with fish over ones with chicken." "I'm sure he does," Sandy said playfully as she switched from his ears to his chin. Mr. Tubbles started purring, closed his eyes, and stretched his head out to give her full access. She loved him a bit more, and then placed a selection of treats beside him for his tasting pleasure. Of course, Bermuda wanted treats too, and she couldn't get them to her furry visitors without giving them to Snowy and Biscuit as well. "So what are we having tonight, my love?" John asked Sandy. He liked cats, but he liked food more. "Well, I'd originally thought I'd do something with my new stasis trays," Sandy replied. "I had thought of doing a whole sweet and savory crepe theme. The tray would keep the crepes fresh, and each of us could switch between savory fillings or sweet filling, depending on how we were feeling." "That sounds absolutely delightful," Annabeth said happily, "but I'm guessing you changed your mind?" "I had everything I needed to make the crepes, but not what I needed to make the fillings," Sandy replied. "I went shopping, but I'm still out of a lot of items. I wanted to make a mushroom chicken filling, but I don't have any mushrooms." "So what are we having now?" John asked, patting his belly. It gave a loud grumble, and he gave it another soothing pat. "I'm making shepherd's pie," Sandy replied. "It's delicious, it's easy to make, and I can have it ready fairly quickly." Annabeth and I both offered to help, but Sandy mostly turned us down. We washed the carrots, onions, and potatoes, but otherwise Sandy did all the work. She loved to cook, and this was her zen. Laughter and stories filled the air, along with the hearty smell of good food as the shepherd's pie baked in the oven. It was only there for about 30 minutes, but the delicious aroma made me ravenous. I thought my stomach was going to eat my innards and then crawl out and go searching for food on its own. Sandy pulled the shepherd's pie out of the oven and was going to let it cool, but John wasn't having any of that. He attacked it right away, and I was right behind him. Tyler laughed at how fast we were, but I noticed he was only a minute behind me. For a while, we were all quiet as we ate like hungry animals. John went back for seconds and then finished off the first casserole dish. Fortunately, Sandy knew what we ate like and had made 2 more. The second casserole didn't stand a chance either. By the time we were tucking into the third one, the laughter and stories were back. I took a moment to just sit back and appreciate the moment. This is what I lived for. I was having good food, good drinks, and good times with my friends. This was my crew. This was my home. This was where I belonged. When I'd been working the underground poker circuit, I hadn't realized how lonely I'd been. I'd been searching for something, and I thought it was success and money. Now I knew I'd been searching for a place to belong, a place to settle down and call my own. It had taken almost dying to get here, but now I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I made a mental snapshot of the moment and tucked it away in my heart. Tyler caught my eye and gave me an understanding smile. He reached over and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Without saying anything, he let me know he was feeling the same thing. He was grateful for the happiness that came from belonging, just like I was. I finally sat back, stuffed full of excellent food and feeling just a little sleepy. I had a good buzz going, and I planned on drinking some more of John's ale and coasting through the rest of the night. If I ended up passed out on the floor with John and Tyler, then so be it. Everyone I cared about was safe, and nobody was actively trying to kill me at the moment. My training and magic breakthroughs were done for the day, so this was my night to just enjoy myself. Which is why I was a little surprised when Sandy turned to me with a glint in her eye and said she'd been waiting long enough. I think that sounds like something John needs to take care of, I teased. John laughed and gave me a high five. Not that, Sandy snorted. My mountain man takes good care of my sound of music, if you know what I mean. I hear the hills are alive, Annabeth chimed in. Sometimes you gotta climb every mountain. Sandy was on a roll. I hear he's 16, going on 17 inches. Annabeth was right there with her. I just realized something interesting. John was almost blushing. Usually he was the one teasing Sandy, and she was the one smacking his arm and playfully telling him to stop. Now the shoe was on the other foot. I ate it up. That is one of my favorite things. Sandy finished with a flourish and gave Annabeth a high five. Tyler and I applauded enthusiastically. That had been an excellent riff off the Sound of Music movie. Seriously though, Sandy turned back to me. You told me you had an idea way back when we were talking to Mop Top at the Tin Charm, and then you said, You told me you had an idea way back when we were talking to Mop Top at the Tin Charm, and then you haven't said anything about it since. That's just cruel. What's a girl got to do to hear an idea from our resident genius? Yes, Jason, Tyler teased. What's a girl got to do? He wiggled his eyebrows at me. Hush you, I commanded and poked him. As soon as I did, I knew it was a mistake. He poked me back and my tickle hypersensitivity kicked in. I shrieked, jumped, and spilled my beer. That was a major sin in John's eyes. He growled at both of us as he grabbed a kitchen towel and helped clean up the mess. Both of us had to promise to be good from now on and not spill any more, or we were cut off. We both meekly agreed, and I got a refill. I took a big slurp, sighed in pleasure, and then turned back to Sandy. I actually have a couple ideas I want to try. I don't know if they will work, but based on what we saw at Mop Top's shop and what Biddy told us, I think they could significantly improve the ability of your charms. One of these ideas will work for any mage, but I think it might be especially useful for naturals or sonic mages. I paused and looked around at my housemates. I certainly had their attention. I guess before we begin, I have to ask, are we okay to do magic? I'm feeling a bit buzzed, but I think I'm all right. I planned on getting everyone together tomorrow, but if we are all good, we can get into it now. I looked around again, and everyone indicated they were feeling good enough. I hear what you're saying, Sandy said calmly, and I don't want to blow my hand off, so I think we should stick to something like the healing charm. It's complicated, but it's not going to put a salt shaker or my furniture through a wall. Annabeth sighed. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Annabeth did Hulk smash, John laughed. Oh, Sandy, you should have seen your face. You were so mad. He laughed again, and this time Annabeth laughed with him. She was really mad, wasn't she? Annabeth chuckled. That damn salt shaker just picked up speed, and I couldn't stop it. I still remember feeling like, oh shit, and then it hit the wall, and there was a huge hole. John was laughing hard now, and he had Annabeth going too. The salt went everywhere. She was trying to say more, but she was laughing too hard. Sandy was trying to look serious, but she started chuckling with them. It wasn't just the salt. Sandy tried to sound stern, but failed. It was the furniture. You smashed my furniture into the walls too. I'm so sorry, Annabeth cried, but she was laughing so hard now she couldn't stop. It's not funny, Sandy tried to protest, but she was laughing too. Your face! John tried to pat Sandy on the back, but he was laughing so hard he missed. Somehow, that became hysterical, and the three of them laughed so hard they couldn't breathe. Tyler and I weren't there for the incident, but their laughter got us going, and soon we were all laughing together. We laughed until we cried. Then Annabeth snorted, and we laughed some more. Every time it died down, John would do an Annabeth Hulk smash, or Sandy would try and protest it was not funny, and that would get us going again. I guess we were all a bit more buzzed than we realized. I hadn't laughed like that in a long time, and it felt so good. Of course, the humor ran its course, and we all caught our breath. Sandy went to the little girl's room, and she said she'd almost peed herself, and Annabeth said that was a great idea, so we all took a break. We tinkled our liquids out and refilled our drinks to put more liquid back in. In a few minutes, we were all gathered together again, and this time we were ready to get down to business. All right, I know this was short, but my editor's been after me again. No more 1,100 word chapters. So anyway, so this finishes up Eggy's time, and next time will be Burning Glass. Stay tuned. See you guys next week.